Welcome to the Flex Forward podcast, where grit meets growth. With your host, Nick Espinette, bringing you stories of resilience, reinvention, and the real climb to success.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Flex Forward podcast. Today, we are joined by Aaron Wilkes. Aaron is an energy trader, and he at Active Power Investments. And I'm going to let Aaron give you a little more information about that and about himself. Aaron, welcome to the Flex Forward podcast. We're glad to have you. Can you let our listeners know a little bit about you and what it is you do?
Absolutely, and thanks so much for having me on the show.
You bet.
Energy trading is what I do, and it's kind of a little known field. In fact, when I got into it, or before I got into it, I didn't really know that it even existed. But I started out my career at ConocoPhillips, and I was supporting the trade floor. So I kind of got to see all the different commodities that we were trading, crude oil, natural gas, power. And power was the most interesting one to me. So I kind of went that direction and got into power trading there. And then since then, I've been working for some different hedge funds and different prop shops, trading power. And so essentially what I do is I am looking at a lot of weather forecasting, kind of trying to make determinations on, what I think the grid is going to do in terms of demand, renewables, things like that, where the constraints are going to show up on the grid. And so those are kind of just like localized supply and demand imbalances that affect pricing. So I make bets on forward electricity prices at different time periods in the future. So kind of how, traders would look at crude oil futures or natural gas futures, kind of similar thing, but for power. So I'm trading up to about a year out on the curve. And
wow.
Yeah, so it's kind of, time risk in addition to other risks. And so kind of just managing that, tight risk management is key in what I do. And then just understanding the fundamentals of the power grids that I'm trading.
Well, interesting, because you said weather forecasting. I'm thinking 2 weeks is kind of where you feel, if you're looking at planning a trip or doing something, you're around that 10 to 14 days where you start feeling fairly comfortable that the weather's going to get it right. But you're looking a year out thinking, because I would imagine your big spikes are summer or winter, like being in Texas.
Yes.
If we have one of those long, it's going to be below freezing for, well, maybe not in Houston, but up in DFW, 2 to 5 days or something below freezing. You start going, well, is our power going to? I think things probably spike, or those, August, September. We, late July, August, September, where it stays every day is above 100 for a while. Or many days are above 100. So you got to forecast. So interesting. Yeah, you're definitely reading the tea leaves on some stuff that may be way out there. So very, very interesting. Yeah, this is something I have apartments, and we deal with an energy broker that helps us choose things. And that's more when I saw energy trader, what popped in my head was something like what he does. You're completely different. I guess, people probably do it with beef or, cows, and you're just looking to think what the demand's going to be. And they're probably weather dependent too. Like if it's a drought, the farmers may have to sell off some of their cows, and because they can't, they need to supplement their feed. Interesting. Very neat. Well, getting into that field, I'm sure there's some competition to be good. It's, if there's money to be made, you're going to get some smart people come in. And what's something that sets you apart from others that might be doing it?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I think one of my biggest edges is emotional intelligence. And so I'll just unpack that a little bit. In trading, it's a highly psychological game. It's very, very psychological, and you have to be mentally tough to trade these products that are so far out on the curve, and they may go against you. And we have in futures what's called mark to market. And so as the prices move up and down, basically your account will show a net gain or loss based on how the price moves in relation to where you entered that position. So you'll see like a gain or a loss on your account, even though it's not realized yet. Mm-hmm. But it's basically accounting for how the price has moved. So just being able to, kind of stick with your conviction and stay with the position, even if it's losing money, because you think in the end you're going to be correct about your assumption and your position. That kind of sets me apart, kind of just being able to understand the market, why it's doing what it's doing, why people are buying or why they're selling, kind of, coming up with these, I'll call them theories, because, the market is so deep that you can't always be right as to why it's moving the way it's moving, but you can at least make, educated kind of bets on why it's moving a certain way. But yeah, back to your comment, you're absolutely right. So your guy is probably like, he's on the retail side, I'm on the wholesale side. So
Okay.
I deal with all the wholesale pricing, which then trickles down obviously to retail, but just kind of a different level. And we operate in megawatts rather than kilowatts or kilowatt hours. So quite a bit larger size. And yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting and dynamic profession. Lots of volatility. It's actually the most volatile commodity that exists, even more so than Bitcoin.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, but you hit the nail on the head with summer and winter obviously have the highest demand. Typically, summer has a little bit higher demand than winter due to the AC demand. So typically, we'll see the absolute highest peaks in summer over winter, but price spikes can happen in any time of year, really. And the grid operator, their job is to balance the grid and manage supply and demand. So the grid has to operate at a certain frequency. It's actually like 60 hertz, which means that the energy on the grid is oscillating or going back and forth 60 times per second. That's how quickly the the electricity moves on the grid. And so they have to maintain that frequency to keep the grid in balance. And so they're constantly trying to match supply with demand on the grid in real time to make sure that the frequency stays very close to that level. So yeah, when it gets out of balance, that's when you see the price spikes.
Interesting. Yeah. And then let's say, I guess, are you mostly in Texas or are you all across the country to see the spikes in the summer? Because I would think the north is probably almost flipped, but maybe not.
Yeah, I trade everywhere in the Midwest and the East.
Okay.
So a little bit in Texas, but it's not my primary market.
Gotcha.
Even though I do
So
live here.
more cold climates. I mean, what I
Yeah,
think is
yeah,
you're not the Texas blazing summers.
yeah, yeah. It's definitely, the areas that do get quite a bit colder, like upper Midwest. I mean, Minnesota might get to minus 40 at times in the winter. It's crazy up there. I don't know how people even go outside when it's that
Hard to
cold.
even fathom that
Yeah,
cold.
yeah,
I think that single digits coldest I've ever seen in Texas, and that's very
yeah.
brief, and we're not outside.
Yeah, yeah, like back in 21 when we had the winter storm Uri, I'm sure you remember that,
Yeah.
and
No,
everybody
I
had the power outages. Yeah, that was crazy because Texas has actually the highest price cap um, of any grid, and it's the price cap is $9,000 per megawatt hour. So to translate that to kilowatt hours, like imagine if your bill was $9 per kilowatt hour, you probably pay like maybe 13 to 15 cents.
okay.
Imagine paying $9 per kilowatt hour for your electricity. So there was actually this company called Griddy back then that had the bright idea to pass through the wholesale prices to retail customers, which was fine most of the time until it wasn't. Like during Winter Storm Uri, and before the storm, they were actually advising folks to switch providers because they knew it was going to be bad. And Texas sat at the price cap of 9,000 for days on end. So people
That's
were
a thousand
having,
time multiple of what. Wow.
yeah, yeah. So people were having like $2,000 electric bills from this and things like that. And so
Yeah, I remember hearing some
yeah,
of those horror stories. The
yeah,
time I had I think 4 apartment complex. We had some freezing in Houston, but 3 in Abilene. Uh, 2 of them the power stayed on most of the time. One we went 5 days without power, and we had a toilet bowl that it was a vacant unit that faced north and had 3 external walls, a smaller unit that the part where the water sits and the bottom part, froze and broke. Like it cracked it
wow,
open. It got that cold in there. Yeah,
yeah,
I was out there helping, and a contractor's like, "Come here, I've never seen this before," and it froze and shattered the round part of the bowl, not the back part
gotcha,
where the water sets, but that's how cold it was out there. And I felt
wow,
we got lucky. we had like
Yeah.
40 something leaks, which sounds like a lot, but there were
Hmm.
some people that just had tons. And I mean, we may have had, I think it was around 15,000 in damage, but it's a
Hmm.
200 plus unit property. So that when it first happened, I'm like, oh my goodness, what is this? This is going to be multiple six figures in water damage, but we
Yeah.
were blessed to get it fit. We didn't have a lot free. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Right.
a crazy time. I bet some people
Yeah.
may have made some money if they were trading right on that or lost.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Some of the utilities actually had to declare bankruptcy because, they had generators that were supposed to be on, but what happened was the infrastructure in Texas really wasn't set up for that kind of cold. So you had
Mhm.
natural gas pipelines freezing, so you couldn't get gas to the gas power plants. And then um, some of the aspects of the power plants themselves actually froze because they weren't winterized properly because the standards weren't what they needed to be to handle that kind of demand and that kind of cold. But yeah, Abilene is an interesting area because it's kind of an up and coming area for data centers. I don't know if you're
Mhm.
familiar with that, but so that probably bodes well for your apartments there
It's
because
been very nice. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, definitely have some demand from, the construction of those people coming into town for that. You need a lot of workers to get those things built and that sort of thing. So that's actually a good area to own property right now.
Yep. No, we love it right now. And they're building two data centers and then a micro nuclear plant. I can't remember what it's called, but they've built
Hmm.
one at Abilene Christ, one of the universities there. It's like the size of a not even the size of a basketball court, but it's going to
Hmm.
be little mini nuclear reactors I know very
Yeah.
little about it that have just a small amount of nuclear material. So if there ever is a problem,
Okay.
it's not going to pollute a
Yeah.
massive area. But just to the north, about 45 minutes from us, they're building several of those. We had somebody come in and want at least 40 of our units at an apartment. We're like, we're full.
Wow.
I wish we could help you because
Yeah.
it's in a very small town, but we're the nearest town of any size that
Yeah. Yeah.
can help with housing. So yeah, we're having a major boom there right now. So it's been
That's great.
nice. And so, but there is probably on the energy side. I know there's a lot of debate. Is like how much are they going to take? I
Mhm.
mean, I think they're building those micro nuclear reactors to help power. Uh,
Mhm.
it's not pulling from the grid, and there's a lot of wind and
Yeah.
solar, but I don't close around that area. But
Yeah.
how much that can uh, supply is debatable. Um,
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, it's intermittent, so sun has to be shining, wind has to be blowing, so it can't always supply the power. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, data centers they're a tough thing right now because everyone's trying to do them. All these tech companies are trying to build data centers, and in the biggest grid that's out east, for example, if you just want to hook up to the grid and power your data center with regular sort of grid power, the wait time is like 8 years to get through the
oh
queue
wow,
to get a data center powered. So they're having to find creative ways to get around that. So one thing they're doing is building behind the meter generation. So effectively, they'll build their own power plant for the data center directly to power it rather than relying on grid power because some of these data centers they take a gigawatt or more of power once they're through all their phases of construction. So that's quite a lot of demand. It's essentially like putting a small city like here's a small city, let's put it right here. And
yeah,
so when you do that, the grid can't handle that. So you have to make all these transmission upgrades, which costs, possibly billions of dollars in addition to the construction of the data center. So it's an interesting space right now.
yeah. No, it's going to be. We're riding the wave, but we didn't know about it when we bought properties out there, so we're definitely enjoying the. There's 4 to 6 thousand construction jobs on these for they're saying anywhere between 2 to 4 years. So and there's
Yeah.
two of them, so we're definitely loving it right now. So, have as you've worked through and grown in different areas within what you're doing with the trading, have you come across any sources that help you grow as a person or even a trader or, just anything else that you do? What can you share some of those with our listeners?
Yeah, sure. So I would say that, in this line of work, it's great to have a mentor. That's definitely an important thing. I unfortunately never really had like a good mentor or a formal one. I've had some folks that I've definitely learned a lot of things from. throughout the years that I've been trading at these different companies. And it's kind of like, imitation is the highest form of flattery,
Mhm.
right? So just kind of learning how other people did things well and kind of taking what was useful to me and, kind of rejecting what was not useful to me, that sort of premise. But yeah, in terms of like resources, it's really kind of a tough area to learn because it's really just on the job training and experience by immersing yourself in the markets and going through some of these crazy events like the Uri of 2021 or Winter Storm Fern this year earlier this year. That was a big one that gave quite a scare, especially in the north and the eastern markets because it kind of almost came out of nowhere. And earlier you had mentioned, kind of up to 2 weeks out is where you can forecast weather, and that's pretty accurate. I mean, beyond that, like the weather forecast is debatable. So
Mhm.
you can like there is a forecast and you can look at it, but do you believe it? Not so much. It's not that believable until it gets
I
pretty
wouldn't want to bet my
close.
life savings on it out that far.
Right, right, exactly. And so, early January, the market was trading as if everything was normal. And then all of a sudden, it was looking like it was going to be pretty cold late January. And then it was looking like it was going to be really cold. And then the Friday before the storm, I remember power was trading like $400 for the week, which is really, really high. We walked in on Monday and it traded as high as over 1,000, like
Wow.
almost up to $1,400 for the week. And so what they had to do was they actually increased the margin requirement on futures contracts by 400%. So if you ever heard of getting a margin call, lots of people got margin calls that day because all of a sudden your position is, majorly underwater, and also the cost to hold that position has increased by 400%. So post a lot more money or we liquidate your positions and basically you're screwed. So that's kind of how that went. It was a scary time. Actually, the most stressful day of my career was that Monday. But we survived it and came out okay. So all is well.
Nice. Yeah. When you hopefully things like that you learn and it strengthens you, you develop and
Yeah,
you walk away for the next time. I heard a neat saying on I think it's a podcast, and I don't know that you took a loss, but when you get something scary like that, don't take it as a loss, an L, take it as a lesson. So I bet you walked away from a lesson on that one. Um,
exactly. Yeah, that's exactly true. You have to learn from these kind of things. And I think that's one thing that is hard for a lot of like newer traders is like they haven't experienced some of these extreme events. So they haven't really seen what can happen. I mean, you can look back in time, but it's different when it's happening and it's unfolding in real time and you're kind of seeing like the forecasts change and what that looks like and then what actually happens. And, nobody can predict what exactly is going to happen, of course. So you just do the best that you can to manage around that. But yeah, absolutely, we call them the black swan events, and so they occur kind of at random. Like you don't know when they're going to occur, but they've been occurring more frequently, and I think that's due to some different reasons. But some people say it's due to global warming, could be part of the reason. Among other things, but yeah, we've seen the frequency of those events increase over the last few years, and in summers and in winters. But winters seem to be, from my experience, like the time when we've seen probably the most of these extreme type of scenario events, like tail events. So yeah, just kind of over time, developing wisdom, I would say, around that is critical because you don't really know how to react or how you will react until you've actually been through it. And it's trading is also kind of a pain tolerance thing. It's like if you're losing, how much can you handle losing before you just give up on
Call
the
uncle.
trade? Yeah, so it's managing your own emotions, and that's why earlier I mentioned emotional intelligence because you have to be able to manage yourself. And one piece of advice I always give to younger traders is you have to try to disconnect your identity from trading as much as possible. Because if you don't, you're just basically riding a roller coaster of emotions. It's not going to feel very good. So You can't beat yourself up too much, but like you said, every L is a lesson, and if you're smart, you'll learn from it and you'll come back
Mhm.
better. It's the problem is when you don't learn from it. So you definitely want to take those lessons, instead, and learn from those as best you can.
No, for sure. Well, very well said. Well, it sounds like things are going really well in your business, and as a lot of people start having more success, they start considering, other investments outside of what they're doing in, either real estate or crypto or stocks, and maybe even energy if somebody's not already in that. But what are your thoughts on, investing in other things that don't take your time to do, but just to try to create some passive income in areas that you're not having to direct the traffic on?
Yeah, no, I love that idea. In fact, I'm doing that now, and will continue doing that. Real estate is kind of my weapon of choice there. So yeah, I like to find good, strong operators that I can partner with as an LP, and kind of just put my capital to work on their projects. And so, kind of been developing a portfolio of real estate projects and developing that passive income, trying to get that built up enough so that one day when it does replace the 9 to 5 income, then I can just kind of do that and do other things. So energy trading is a bit taxing, and so I don't want to do it forever. I've been doing it for over 10 years now, which is, they say, about the average career lifespan of an energy trader is about
Is that
10
right?
years. That's
Yeah, I
that's
could
what they
see this
say.
one because those unknown, like this winter storm that pops up within 2 weeks or so, that
Yeah.
and all of a sudden you may be having all your positions called. It's like, yeah, that's gonna put a pit in your stomach for a
Yeah,
while.
for sure. And one thing is, you never want to have so many positions on that it'll sink you completely. So that's just kind of the discipline around trading, is that you have to manage your risk, and part of that is not putting on too hefty of a position that if something crazy does happen, it's going to absolutely sink you. So yeah, just being disciplined to do that is pretty key, and that's how you survive in this long term, is by not allowing yourself to get blown up, as we say. When one of these events does come around.
I bet so. So, as for wrapping up the interview, would you have any? Excuse me, hiccup. Do you have any exciting plans or initiatives in the works for the next 6 to 12 months?
Actually, yes, we are starting physical trading soon, which is essentially we can flow physical power between the different grid operators. So one of them covers most of the East Coast, and then there's one that's a couple that are big in the Midwest. So we'll be essentially flowing power back and forth from the East Coast to the Midwest, and just based on how the prices are different. So whichever grid has the higher price, if it crosses a certain threshold, then we'll basically take power and send it to the next grid, because they can import and export from each other. Unlike Texas, Texas has very limited import export capacity compared to other grids that have quite a lot. So that's one thing. And then another thing is, we're looking at also doing some asset backed deals. So looking at potentially acquiring some equity in some physical power assets like power plants and things like that. So that's an initiative that I am starting also on my team. So yeah, it's been great. This company is really good for me. They allow us to do new things and try new things, and if it makes sense and we have a valid business plan for it. So yeah, just kind of expanding in these different ways.
That's awesome. Well, it sounds like a lot of interesting, exciting stuff coming up here in the near
Yeah,
future for you. Well,
yeah, for
Aaron,
sure.
thank you so much for coming on and sharing some tips and insights with our listeners and myself. If people would like to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, get in touch with me through LinkedIn. I always respond to people's requests or messages, so you can find me there. And that's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me. And then we can take conversations offline as appropriate. But yeah, LinkedIn is a good way.
Okay, awesome. Thanks everyone for listening today. Be sure to like and share this episode. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. Great. Got a lot of good information. Very interesting. It's something I've never even thought about, the trading of energy, but all these neat things that other people are doing. There's just lots of avenues to create income and wealth. So congratulations on all you're doing.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Thanks for listening to the Flex Forward podcast. If you've got grit, growth, and a great story, visit flexforwardpodcast.com/guest to apply and join us on the show.